Katy, Tessa, Luzuriaga, and Cesar de la Fuente. Despite the seemingly limitless ability for man to create impenetrable monuments meant to withstand the test of time, corrosion takes all things eventually, and there is nothing on Earth that can prevent it from occurring. The Earth both gives and takes. And this cycle is how the global ecosystem has functioned for eons. For the time being agrees with this idea, as Annie Dillard utilizes the motif of erosion to emphasize the inevitability of eroding life on Earth in sand, numbers, and China, thus paralleling the idea of how humanity's time on Earth is finite.
Erosion is not directly discussed in the subsection of numbers, it's implicitly discussed through the movement of the Earth and the march of time, and how they both erode away life and destroy it. On page 107, Dillard talks about how the waves from the boat form and crash over each other, symbolizing how the Earth is constantly moving over itself and breaking down under its own weight. This can then transition to page 109, where Dillard goes back to the 138,000 people in Bangladesh on April 30th, 1991. And this is how the movement of Earth leads to destruction and the erosion of life. Because as the Earth is constantly moving, it is constantly taking other life forms with it. The movement of Earth itself is creation and destruction. It is the creation of new life form, but also the destruction of another life form. This then transitions into page 158, how the footprints of the three people from long ago were recently uncovered, but then were again destroyed by the movement of Earth, how the tree roots were cracking it and the sands were already bearing it, showing how how the movement of Earth is, while it is creating new life and allowing us to live, it is burying the evidence of old life and erasing it and eroding it from history. This and page 186, where Dillard discussed how the sand and dirt pile up on everything, but each year fungus, bacteria, and termites carry off the old layer, creates the idea that the Earth is constantly growing, but as it grows, it also erodes away, creating room for new life. But this cannot happen without the march of time, to which Dillard says it is the trap itself, no one makes it through, no one gets out. She shows how time will always erode away our lives from what we were and destroy our lives. On page 108, Dillard talks about how the curled waves forming would break over each other thousands a second unendingly. This shows that our life is as relevant as a second in a year in the time that the Earth has been around, and that time will continue to move without us and will continue to destroy and create while the Earth moves around it. To summarize this all, it is best to go back to page 49, where Dillard says a quote, "The dead outnumber the living." This shows us how time brings everything to destruction. No matter how great, no matter how tall, everything is on a time clock, and how everything is just waiting to erode away.
Dillard uses the subsection of China to emphasize the motif of erosion and show how after we die, we just become another layer of the Earth, and eventually become the Earth, and a new phase eventually takes over. Hence in time, we see dinosaurs, then we have the cavemen, then we go on to industrialize, and now we have today. But she emphasizes erosion in a different way. As stated on page 14, Emperor Qin had sculptures to make thousands of individual statues. She is showing how the terracotta soldiers had a sense of individuality, but then emphasizes on 15, the clay people were Earth itself, which shows a loss of individuality, and they just become the Earth, and henceforth become another layer so a new generation can live on top. Then on page 45, she goes on to say, there were almost 5 billion of us specimens alive that morning in 1982. Then says, other humans I knew had lived far below them. This depicts the motif of erosion and layering thereafter, because there were so many people alive to then be buried and built on top of, that there were just billions of graves underneath us, making the layers of the Earth signify the different generations, which shows Earth's expansion, but then leads to erosion and becoming another layer. To further solidify her views on erosion, leading to constant layering, by stating, the Mongolians are now no longer here. The season of the yellow winds is over. By stating this, Dillard shows that the erosion of a dynasty in time can just become a historical fact, hence losing their individuality and layering up just as the dinosaurs did many years before.
Erosion is a concept that helps pressure people into determining what aspects of their life are worth focusing on. It represents how everyone and everything is subject to the sands of time, and eventually, all will erode away into tiny, minuscule, insignificant particles and return to the earth. Nature constantly and consistently breaks itself apart. Explosions blast the rocks, lichens secrete acids, which break minerals, lichens widen rocks cracks, Growing salt crystals split them further, and freezing water shatters them. So though it may not seem like it to modern society, humanity has little control over what occurs on this earth. Hence, what people do with the little time they have between birth and death is a big matter to consider. Diller believes that this precious time should not be wasted on pointless legacies or immortalizing achievements. For even exposed, uplifted sandstone naturally can wear away again. A sandstone castle in Austria, 900 years old, is itself returning to soil, weathering as turns its outer walls to clay from which grass grows. A glorious castle could be constructed from the sturdiest materials obtainable, yet it will still shrink as the centuries went on. And this decrepit reality is the same for the human body. A young child could spend their whole youth and adulthood maintaining a fit body with healthy living styles, and still succumb to the aches and pains of age during their midlife stages and in their elderly phase. It is an inevitability, almost a rule of life, a point that Diller tries to get across, and something humanity should not waste time trying to prevent. Many times in history, people have tried to search for the answer to immortality, but more often than not, they ruin their lives and relationships with the people who care for them, or even shorten their lifespans through their foolish experimentation and desperate struggle. Within numbers, the motif of erosion is utilized with numerical values to emphasize the insignificance of humanity in comparison to the grand scheme of life, death, creation, and destruction. Historical context in China is given to highlight the past foolish attempts to forestall erosion or to prevent one's legacy from falling. And these ideas are disproven as the Chinese army and dynasty still fall, and the terracotta soldiers are only a fragmented relic of the original legacy intended to be left behind. And sand is a physical manifestation of the Earth's natural abilities to wear away at humanity's standing achievement, all of which parallels human life on Earth, and how Diller tries to get across to the reader that people must spend their lives enjoying life and not worrying about death. There is, and there only will ever be now.